Hey guys, today we're going to be making this paginated list with Node.js as the backend, and that will actually do the pagination. So it's server-side pagination, not front-end pagination. And as you could see, it's like a dummy search result. Well, I mean, the list is displayed like that anyway. Obviously, this isn't coherent English. So you scroll down, well, here's the pagination, and it works like the Google pagination in the sense where the first few ones it just progresses, but then you go to something like 9, and then all the numbers move back, so that 9's roughly in the middle now, not quite. And then obviously it just progresses like that. And the way the pages are progressed is actually due to this query parameter, this page query parameter in the URL. That means that we can go to a specific page if we just type in a value. So for example 40, this will take us to page 40, as you could see by the red highlighting. And if you go to a page which exceeds the maximum page, so we just typed in 200, but it automatically redirected us to the last page, and that's 114. As you can see, there's an after button there because it wouldn't make sense because it's meant to be the last page. But then there is the after button for all the previous pages, and the database that we'll be using, it's not MongoDB, even though we are using Node.js. It's actually MySQL. Or just any SQL database will work really. We'll be using MySQL because we'll be using the MySQL client, which you can install using npm on our Node.js backend. And this search result, it suits a MySQL or just a SQL database more than MongoDB because this isn't really one-to-many, which MongoDB suits quite a lot. For example, social media where there's videos, images, messages, all associated with one account. That's one-to-many. But this is just numerous rows that are just listed in order. They don't even have relationships, they're just listed in order, and there's thousands of them. So it suits MySQL more for that. So that's the reason why we're using it. So if this interests you, and also we won't be using a framework for this as well. Just as I said before, we're just using standard EJS, which is just HTML templating. And the reason being is because nowadays you wouldn't really be paginating things like this if you were going to use a fancy JavaScript framework like React, because you'd probably more likely to do infinite scrolling, which I've actually already covered on this channel in the YouTube comments React video. So yeah, it's unlikely. This is more old-fashioned pagination, similar to PHP, but we're not going to be using PHP, we're using Node.js. So that's the reason for that, and keep watching if you want to learn how to make this. So here we are in a new project folder. Obviously it's completely empty. And then we've also started our MySQL database, and this is the table that we'll be using. Again, it was shown at the start. And we're using XAMPP to use these two things. We started a patch sheet so that we have a GUI to interface with the MySQL database with. So we will go to our project folder, and then we'll type in cmd here to launch up a new terminal in that project folder. And then we'll say npm init with the Y flag to automatically say yes to everything. And then with that, we will, if you haven't already, we'll install nodemon like so, using that command to install it globally so we don't have to ever do it again. But other than that, we will also install Express, MySQL, and EJS because these are the dependencies that we'll be using for this project. Shouldn't take too long. In fact, they're already installed now. And then we'll say code space full stop to launch up VS Code in our project folder. Obviously you don't have to use VS Code, you can use whatever source code editor that you want to use. And then we will go, because we just created the server.js file, actually we'll just zoom in a bit so you can see this. That should be good. And then we'll actually go to what we'll say, we'll say server.js as our main file. And then we'll create start script, and then that will just say nodemon server.js. Remember our JS file, server.js file, which we literally just created. Inside, I've installed Express now, so we'll require it. And then we'll use that to import to initialize an app, so like so, an Express app. And then we'll say listen. If we are hosting it remotely, then chances are we'll use the port environment variable that's set by our remote server. But in our case, we're just hosting it locally, so we'll use port 3000 and local server. And then inside we'll say console.log server has started on port 3000, And then we will say, we'll use that npm script to say npm run start. And if all's going well, yep, server started on port 3000, so that's clearly working. What we'll now do, we'll now create a new file, we'll call it connection.js, and this will connect to our MySQL database using that MySQL client that we just installed. So we'll first require it, like so, require. And then what we'll do now, we'll create some of the, type in the username, etc. of our MySQL database. And we use that with the create connection method, takes an object as an argument. Host by default, that's 127.0.1. And then user, again by default, this is just assuming that you haven't changed the default username. Well, yeah, that creates automatically for you. The password, I've actually used my own. That's what it is there. By default, this will just be an empty string if you haven't set a password yourself. And then the database that we'll be using is called PHP Pagination. This is meant to be a PHP project originally, but I decided to make it a NodeJS tutorial instead because there's less of those around in comparison to PHP Pagination tutorials. And then we'll actually connect to our MySQL database. So we'll say db using that, that constant that we just created there, db connect. If there's an error, then the argument will be initialized with something. So we'll say if there is an error, then we'll want to throw that error. But if you haven't thrown that error, then we'll just console log connected to MySQL. And this won't work at the moment because what we need to do, we need to go back to our main file, and then we will say, actually no, before you can use this, we'll need to export it. So we'll say module export equals db. Once exported, we can actually import that in this file here. So we'll say const db equals require, and we will require that connection file like so. And then now we should be able to say restart. And then, yeah, as you can see, connected to MySQL, so we're seeing that. So obviously, it hasn't gone wrong. And then what we'll do, we will now declare static folder, and then, this will hold all of our styling. We won't even have a JavaScript file for this project because everything will be done in EJS. So app.use, app.express.static, and the folder, we'll call it public. And we'll also need to configure EJS, so we will say app.set view engine. The view engine that we will be using is EJS. What we now need to do is we now need to configure how many posts you want to show on each page. So for this project, again, you could change this. I'll just type this out here. Yeah, again, you can change this to your liking. But for this example, we're using 30 because that just seems to be very natural. And what we'll now do, this app will only have one root, and that's just very simply the default root, and then open up the callback like so. Two arguments that we always take in with Express. And very simply, we'll create a query. We'll query our photos table, which is actually the only table that we have in our database. As you can see, photos, that's the only one in our PHP Pagination database. And we'll just say select all from photos, so selecting all rows from that photos table. To actually, well, we made the query, but to actually make the query, then we'll say db query, and then pass in the query, and then the second argument will be a callback if there is one, and the result. If there is an error, then we'll want to log that error. Or sorry, not log, we'll throw it so it stops our entire application. And we should now have result. So if we log, we'll log this for now. It will only display the first 100, but if we, oh yeah, we need to go to, so we'll just say localhost port 3000, like I said. Yeah, as you could see, we're now getting 100. Look at all these rows now in the form of JSON. Oh, sorry, not JSON actually, no, just JavaScript objects. And that's how they're represented. Obviously, it's way more than 100. Yeah, it even says here ellipsis 3,305 more items. And what we'll now do, we'll now actually create the EJS file. And the way that we do that, EJS automatically looks in a views folder on our root project folder for all of the views. Well, our project's only going to actually have one view, and that's index EJS. And for now, we will just create the boilerplate code using M abbreviation, which comes with VS Code by default. Title, I don't know, we'll say NodeJS. Pagination. And the Google font, you know, we'll actually use, why not, we use this font here. Just get the regular one. Poppins, it's a pretty good font. Let's copy it here. And then we'll go, just paste it there, and then style sheet, we haven't created it yet, but we'll create it just a second. And even though it will be in our public folder, because remember that's our static folder, we don't say so here, we just say, you know, script, sorry, not JS, CSS, sorry. I don't know how I made that mistake. But anyway, for now, actually no, we won't, not yet anyway. Actually, I don't know, we'll say yeah, fine. So now that we should actually have, we should be seeing something now, hopefully. Oh wait, no, we shouldn't. Because we need to res.render, and then because it's called index.ejs, we just say index like that, and now hopefully it should work. If we send a GET request to that page, as you can see, we needed to refresh, but at once we've refreshed, it's working now, and that's all good. But what we now need to do, we now need to render out. Yeah, so what we'll do for now, we will just render out. We'll say data result. So we will give all of our results to this EJS file so that we can render it out. So what we'll say, we'll get rid of this. Now in EJS, we could type in JavaScript, but they need to be in between these percentage tags here. So we call it data, and then for each to render out, to render through every single one. And then we'll call the iterator entry. And then the problem with EJS is we actually need to close it. So even though technically it's sandwiched in between, for each line we still need to include those tags if we are writing JavaScript code inside. And then we'll render out the title in a header. And because it's a piece of data and not really JavaScript code, although it is data from JavaScript, it's not actually like, you know, like a condition or even an expression. It's just literally the piece of data here. So that's the reason why we include that equals there. If we didn't, then it wouldn't work. And then same for this. And then, yep, so these are all, I don't know if you can see this, but yeah, title and then ID, they're both fields. And they're both columns as well, you know, that's where they come from. And then now if you refresh, obviously every single one, literally every single one. So we're going to have to style, yes, every single one's listed here, but we're going to have to style this stuff. So what we'll do, we'll create that public folder, which we required as a static folder earlier on using Express, and we've already required it here in our EJS file. What we'll do, we'll remove the default margin padding and include the margin padding in our element width values. This is just standard CSS practice, really. A lot of people start the CSS files with this because it just makes it more uniform across browsers. And then we'll use that Poppins font. If it fails to load for some reason, we'll just use sans serif, which is installed on almost every single computer. And then body, we'll give it some padding. so that things are moved towards the right a bit. And then, because remember, text starts off the text goes from right to left, obviously. Well, that's how it is in English anyway. Heading, we'll give it some vertical margin. The A tags, we haven't got any A tags at the moment, but we will soon. Again, I'm just doing styling now to get it out of the way. Margin right, and then we'll set it to color, set the blue. And then we'll create a selected link tag. And this class will be applied to the link that we are currently on. So if we're on page 15, then we'll give link 15 this class. This break, we'll say margin. And this will simply separate out the links from the it will separate out the links from the posts. And then what we'll do now, we will remove the default styling that our browser applies to links, and then we'll just say text decoration none. So we'll just remove the underlines. We don't want our links to have an underline, and that's all the styling that we need. What we will now do is, oh wait, we'll check this out first and foremost. Okay, well that's not working for some reason. Why isn't that working? Style.css. Yep, so, okay, fine. So I just typed in script.js for basically no reason. I don't know why I did that. So yeah, this is looking better now. Well, I mean, it's easier on the eyes. So what we'll now do is, yep, so if we don't get an error here, we'll say num of results, and we'll store that. We'll get it from result.length. Because remember, all this data, what it is an array, and we'll just get we'll count each individual object in the array. And then what we'll now do, we'll work out the number of links that we'll have in total. So remember at the start, I showed you there was 114 pages. Well, that's what this should calculate, and we'll round it up so that, the final page needs to be created, even if it doesn't display, the results per page. It doesn't display all 30 results. It still needs to be generated just to display the final posts, which is the reason why we round it up. And then we get that by the number of results divided by the results per page. And again, math.ceil to round it up. And then what we now need to do is we now need to work out the current page that we're on. And the way that we do that, so we'll say let page equals rec.query.page. And what that does is, hold on a sec, yeah. So, I'll just show you, I'll set it real quick, log that. So if we set a query parameter, because we said rec.query.page, so this query parameter needs to be page, and then we say 1512, like that. If we go back to our terminal, we should see that number being logged, 1512. Oh my god, where is our... Okay, yeah, sorry, just refresh. Okay, kind of gonna have to... Oh, we'll just... Okay, I don't know what's going on here. Yes, I don't know, something's messing around here. You know what, we'll just start a new... thing here. As you can see, we're getting 1512. That's what that is essentially. However, if we just visit the default home page like that, and yes, that's not going to work, because if we just visit the default one like that, then obviously we're not going to, if there isn't a page query parameter set, then we will use this ternary operator. So say number direct.query.page, and what this will do is it will turn that into a number. So this is a question mark, so if this is set, then we will cast it into a number and we will assign it to page. If not though, then we'll just use 1. And so now I don't know why. Yeah, it's working now. Because all that is, I don't know why that was not working. Yes, if we haven't set a query parameter, then it will just use 1 by default for page. And then what we'll say a couple error cases here. So if page is greater than the number of pages. So obviously they want to access a page which is too large to exist. Then we'll simply redirect them. We'll redirect them back to the default route, and then we'll set a query parameter, page equals, and what will it equal? Well, we'll say encode, and this is how you set query parameters in Node.js, and then simply number of pages, so that'll be, it will redirect them to the maximum page essentially. But else, if the alternate scenario has been met, where they tried to access a page which is, you know, below the minimum page that we have, well, we'll redirect them to the same default route, but this case it will be 1, so we'll just send them to the very first page. And then what we'll now do is we will now determine where we need to start counting when we send another query request. You'll see more in a second, but determine the SQL limit starting number, and then we'll say const starting limit equals page minus 1 times by result per page. Yeah, so what this will do is basically, so if we're on page 1, obviously that's 1 minus 1, 0, but then we times by 30, well that's still 0. So we start at post 0, and then we need 30 from that, and then the page will just start at 0 and then show the first 30. Obviously at page 2, 1 times 30 is, just 30 obviously, and then we'll start from the 30th post, because remember page 1 showed the very first 30, and now that we're on page 2, we'll need to start from that location. So that's essentially how that works. It's like the first one that we start is the first post on this page, basically. How far down it is in the SQL table. And what we'll now need to do, we'll now need to make a request. So we'll say get the relevant number of posts for this starting page. And then we'll say SQL equals, we use backticks for this, select all from photos or table, remember, and then we'll limit it. Again, we use backticks so we can use string interpolation. Starting limit, so that's where we will start. And then how long will we go for? So how many more posts down will we go for? Well, that's determined by results per page. So like that, and then we'll now make another query using SQL, because now we assign that new command. And then if there is an error, then we'll need to throw that. Oh, whoops. Yep. So if there's an error, we'll throw that error. Very simple. What we now need to do is we now need to determine where we will start looping through to get the links. Again, this will make more sense later on. So what we'll say page minus 5, because we want to show the first 5 links before the current page that we're on. But that might not always be the case. So if we're on page 1, then obviously, we can't do page minus 5, because that will just be, that would be minus 4. It will show minus 4 anyway. That will be one of the links. So if that is true, then we will just say 1. We'll start from page 1. But if that isn't true, and it's greater than or equal to 1, then we will be able to use it. And then what we'll then do, we'll say ending link, and these will be iterator plus 9, because the amount of links that we want to show is 10 in total, and we start at iterator. That's our first link, and then obviously ending link will be 9 more than that, so there's 10 in total. If that's less than or equal to the number of pages, then we can do that without getting any errors and showing a link for a page which doesn't exist. So if that is true, then we can use it. But if that isn't true, then we'll say page plus number of pages minus page. So the gap between the number of pages and the page that we're currently on, we'll just finish it up basically. We'll just show the final links to complete, you know, up to 114, our final page essentially. And then what we'll say is if ending link, there is one error scenario. So what happens if ending link is less than page plus 4? Because what we want to do is, if we're on page 114, then number of pages minus page will be 0. So it would just be, you know, 114 because we're on page 114. So the problem with that is we won't have any 114 will be our last link, but we'll only have 5 links before 114, and that's not, we want to display 10 links in total, not 5, not only 5, which is what happened currently when we're on the last page, 114. So the way that we're going to fix this is we'll say iterator minus equals page plus 4 minus number of pages. I spelled that wrong. So we're simply subtracting the difference between the number of pages. Yeah, it's the difference between a current page plus 4 minus number of pages. And what that will do, that will add 4 more links. It will set our starting link 4 more links backwards essentially. So we now show 10 links in total. And the reason why we did plus 4 is because 9 minus 5 is 4. So therefore, page is currently, in terms of ending link, it's, you know, page plus 4 will be ending link most of the time. But just in this case, it's not, because we are not showing 4 more links after page, and that's, you know, whereas error scenario, it will be met. Finally, we'll say res not render. Oh wait, sorry, no, you've already done that. What we will do is actually we'll take it from there and then we'll move it into here. And then we actually don't even need to include the values for these objects, because the values will be just the values that these variables hold. And we'll include all of that. We'll send it to this EJS file. And now in this EJS file, make sure everything's working. Yep, looking good. Yes, obviously, you know, we're only getting 30 pages now. But what we need to do, we actually need to render out these links. So what we'll say, first of all, we'll include that break. So there's a gap between the post and the actual links. And then we'll say display the links to the pages. And what we'll do now, we will create a loop, and we'll loop through the we'll say let I equals iterator, that's the starting link number, and then we'll say less than greater than ending link. So that's the number containing ending link will be when our loop stops, and then we'll just increment it like so. And then what we'll now do, we'll say if I is equal to page. So if the link that's currently being rendered out is the page that we're currently on, then we will have to render out an A tag, like actually as we always do. Sorry. I need to close that. Close it like so. And then we'll give it that selected link class which we created beforehand. And then we'll set the href. The href will be it will go to page, add the page query parameter. And then we'll actually include scriptlets here. And then we'll simply put I there. so the page that we're currently on, essentially. It will just redirect us back to that. And then we'll need to have some content to actually render out. And that will be I. And then obviously we'll need to close this if condition. Actually, no, before closing it, we will continue. So we'll just skip to the next loop iteration once this if condition has been met, or once once the continue keyword has been met. Then we'll use continue. We'll close off the if condition, and then we'll just copy this now, because obviously that's only going to be met once. But normally we'll just render out the link like so, and finally what we now need to do is we will do the before. Sorry, there's actually something that I missed out. Yeah, so we haven't, so what we now need to do now is so we'll close the loop there. So yeah, this is for closing the if statement, which I haven't even opened up actually. Yeah, so this will close the if condition, this one will close the loop. So below the loop, what we'll say if page is less than number of pages, then we'll open up the link like so, and then we'll just render out an A tag. The href will be same as before, or almost the same anyway. The only difference really is that we will be using page +1. But other than that, and also after as well, and then obviously because we opened the curly brace, we'll need to close it like so, and then before these links as well, we'll need to have on there. This will be -1 because it's before, and the condition will be if page is greater than 1, because obviously the only time we're not going to show that is on the very first page. And then we go back now. We'll remove this, because that should only be on the, that's what made it so special. So as you can see, we're on page 1 currently. We go to page 2, and as you can see, I know this wasn't a great tutorial, but it got the job done. As you can see, things are working as they should be. And we're currently on page 12, which is why it's highlighted, but nothing else is. We'll go to what I was talking about. See what I mean? So we're currently rendering. Every other time it's like sort of in the middle, but the only time we don't want it to be in the middle is when this if condition here is met. And when this if condition here is met, we still want to display 10 links like we always do. So 3, 6, 9, 10. But obviously this is at the end now, not in the middle, and that's essentially what all that was about. And obviously that same principle was applied at the very start as well, where it's not at the middle because it's just page 3 at the very start. And obviously you could check all this out, all these links are different. And yeah, this is the pagination, guys. I know I made some mistakes here, I wasn't as good as I could be, but I hope you understood it. If you didn't, if you want me to clarify anything, then please post in the comments box below, and I will do my best to answer any queries that you might have. But I hope you have a great day, and I hope you enjoyed this video and learnt something from it, and peace out.